Welcome to the Raider Life Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Boots. This interview has been trimmed from its original format to meet YouTube and Facebook's video standards. For entire episodes and bonus interviews, head on over to RaiderLife.com or subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. Now, let's get into this week's episode. Number 64, legend, George Buehler. George, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Man, so Whittier, California you come from. Same city as Richard Nixon, huh?
There you go. My dad went to high school with him. They were both in the class of 39, something around there. I'm having a senior moment, but I know they were in a couple of group pictures in the annual.
Really?
Yeah. I sent a copy back to Nixon to have him autograph it, and sent a self-addressed padded envelope for him to send it back in. A few days later, I get my padded envelope back, and I open it up. It's one of Nixon's books called In the Arena. I thought that sucker stole my annual. However, a few days later, with another envelope, I did get it. So prevented me from having to go back to Chicago and get it out of it.
Oh, man, did Pops ever share any stories about Nixon growing up?
You know, he just remembers that he was a pretty popular guy, and in the annual it talks about him winning some California debate contest. So he was debating way back then. So but that's probably about all my dad remembers of him. Wow. Nixon, of course, in the book that he autographed, said how he remembered my dad, and he said a whole bunch of things about him. The only thing is I noticed that he was saying things that I had sort of already told him. So I'm not sure how well he knew my father.
George is thinking, hey, where's my writing credits there?
Oh, man. So when you were growing up out there, what were the primary sports in your primary interests?
Well, you know, my older brother, he's 6 years older than I, and he was a big kid. He eventually got to be almost 6'7", 280 pounds, played at Stanford, and got NFL offers, but he turned them down, went into medicine, and became an orthopedic surgeon up in Butte, Montana. Wow. That's another story. When he chose Butte, he's a big hunter fisherman, so he chose Butte, and the group that was interested in him was the same group that Evel Knievel's local orthopod was in. So,
really?
Yeah, but by that time, Evel needed a traveling orthopod, so this doctor took care of him when he was a kid, breaking bones and all that stuff. So,
did you know your brother was going to go into medical growing up?
Oh, yeah. Both my grandfathers were doctors. I've got a couple uncles. My sister's medical technologist.
Grandpas?
Yeah, and I have an aunt who is an anesthesiologist. So, it was sort of, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go into medicine, and now when people ask me why I didn't, I said, well, all of my family wanted to be professional football players, but they couldn't make it, so they became doctors.
Not a bad fallout plan.
Yeah, I had to have something to come back with.
Where do you think you'd be in medicine?
Well, the problem was my first year at Stanford, I flunked chemistry, so that pretty much did in a medical aspiration.
Were you trying?
I was never a good student. My older brother, he got straight A's in high school. My sister got straight A's. My brother's 6 years older than me. My sister's 5. Then came World War II. And in 47, 5 years later, I was the first of the post-war baby boomers. And then I had two brothers, Bing Bang Bong, came right after me. So
Is it all boys? Is the Buehler family all boys?
Well, no, my older sister, is female. She had to be pretty tough with 4 brothers, but she could handle it.
Wow. You know what's wild? You said your dad's the yearbook was in the 30s. Imagine your grandpa's the advances they saw in the medical world in their lifetime. What year do you think your grandfathers were born?
Oh, wow. I think they were born in the United States. I don't think they were immigrants. On my father's side, they came from Germany. And but let me just finish that last bit. I just remember what we were talking about is, the grades, getting the bad grades, and my sister and brother getting all A's and everything. They were so impressive that my chemistry teacher in high school, my first semester gave me a higher grade than I should have gotten. He explained to me that because my older brother and sister were so smart, they figured this must have been a fluke, so he gave me a higher grade. But the next semester he did.
The Buehler name ain't gonna get you through 2 years.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, I think my 2 grandparents on my father's side were born in America, but they came from the Midwest out here to Whittier. In fact, my dad was born in Whittier, so we've been in Whittier for a long time.
And that's down Southern California, right? That's near San Diego?
Yeah, we're actually, I think we're about 20 miles east of LA. So we're sort of we're in Los Angeles County, right near Orange County. So Disneyland was about 45 minutes away. Newport Beach, we would go down there and that sort of thing. We were near, fairly close to Hollywood and Pasadena.
That's gotta be cool growing up by Hollywood.
There were days when the Whittier Hills, which were only about a half a mile from the school, we couldn't see them, and the smog was so thick. Back when I was a kid, we'd have those smoggy days that were horrible. They don't have that now.
Wow, more factories and cars?
Yeah, they said that back in the early days when there were Indians were camped in the Los Angeles area, that the smoke from their fires would stay in that basin. It was known for being smoky because there weren't many gaps in the mountains to blow the air out into the desert. So it kind of accumulated there. And there's a split in the hills right there with San Bernardino and stuff. And, we used to go out into the desert to go water skiing and hunting and stuff. And I remember going through that area, and it was just thick as, it was like fog. You had to turn your fog lamps on to get through there. So,
wow.
It's probably, the air's probably just as bad for you now. You just can't see it.
Right, now we got the cell phones damaging us too.
Yeah.
The hunting out there had to be incredible, and a guy that you're close with, and there's so many iconic photos of you two, Jimmy Otto, just got back from visiting Pops, and man, saw the rifles, saw some of the hunting trophies. Did you guys ever go hunting together?
I never went hunting with Pops. Went with LaMonica. Daryl was a member of a duck club just out here by not Pleasanton, over by Antioch, out in the blues over there. And Kenny Stabler and Bill Budness and Marv Hubbard. We'd go out there. In fact, I even went to LaMonica's place, and he had Bing Crosby was out there hunting with us. So
really,
yeah, I got to meet old Bing.
Oh man, what were you guys hunting that day?
Ducks.
Wow.
But we didn't get to sit in the same blind with him. That was LaMonica. They spent the day together, and I think I was stuck with Ray Chester or somebody.
The Baltimore kid.
Yes. Good to hear. I know Pops has been pretty sick here lately. I'm hope he's doing well. I haven't talked to him for a while.
He's doing well, man. He's honestly doing real well. Top of the year, he wasn't doing so well, but man, he just keeps bouncing back. That's Jimmy Otto.
Yeah, it's amazing. He's a little like Madden. I remember at Madden's 50th birthday that Virginia threw him a surprise party, and we all were there. And Madden, when he got up to talk, he said, "I'll bet you guys didn't think I'd live to this age, being such a type A guy." And Pops is pretty tough too, you know. I mean, he's put his body through the mill, so he's doing well.
Do you remember the first time you and Jim met?
No, I can't recall the first time. One of the things Jim used to do is he would, you know, when we'd bend over in the huddle, I'm right next to him, and he'd reach around and pinch me on the butt, and he had a hell of a pinch, and every time I'd pop straight up. But plus Otto had a lot of jokes, and Ollie Spencer was our line coach. You know, every once in a while he knew we needed a breather, so he'd ask, "Anybody got a joke?" And we'd all say, "Yeah, Otto, good Otto." They weren't funny, but they were long. So, you know, we appreciated those long breaks. Jim had a lot of stories. Olga and Spin were some of his favorite characters that he used. Oh, he's from the old country, so that, you know, he brings a lot of stuff from over there. Yeah.
Man, these guys, you come up, you know, you got a special relationship with Dalby, with Upshaw, such legends. That line was so iconic. Do you remember just strategizing with these guys before the games and some of the conversations you guys would have, or how you'd prepare for the other team?
Well, you know, we were a very proud group, and you know, we took great pride in opening holes and protecting Stabler, which, you know, we were pretty well known for doing. And you know, it was a great honor, but also, you know, you had to pay your dues. You know, every Sunday came around, and you didn't want to be the guy who got Kenny sacked or, you know, missed the block, and so we didn't get the touchdown. So it created a lot of pressure, but you know, the reward was great when you came out of that. And we were not a bunch of talkers. You know, Madden was not a rah-rah guy. I think that was one of the reasons that he could get so much out of a bunch of renegades. It wasn't his job to get you up for it. You know, that's your responsibility. He'd come in, he'd tell you what you did wrong, he'd tell you what you had to change, and then he left it in your hands to do the work. So, you know, that was, you know, he had confidence in us, and so we took that seriously. We didn't do a lot of rah-rahing. You know, nowadays, you know, somebody scores a touchdown and they are all jumping around like it's something unusual. We scored and walked back to the huddle. I mean, that's what we do. We score, you know. It's no big thing to go jumping around and celebrating.
Right.
But anyway, we just tried to stay in there, do our jobs, and do it well.
I guess you're right. When there's strong pride and poise, one of the Raiders' morals, but when there's strong pride, you don't really need to coach it up much, do you? Because, you know, the guys are going to play for that pride.
I remember one time we were playing in Kansas City, and we got a late start. Kansas City got a couple touchdowns up on us, and the crowd was just yelling and screaming and going wild, and, you know, that made us mad. So, you know, we ended up, you know, just pounding them, and of course the crowd quieted down, and, you know, we didn't make a big deal of it, but, you know, when you quiet the crowd that you're doing your job. So
I'll put a smile on your face, huh?
oh yeah.
So I know I guess the Chargers weren't down there when you're growing up, but what's it like for you to see? You've seen a lot of teams move in your life, but what's it like for you to see the Chargers headed to L.A. and the Raiders headed to Vegas?
When I was a kid, the Chargers were the Los Angeles Chargers.
Right, they started there.
Yeah, as kids, you'd want to be one of the, you'd pick a favorite player who you liked to see, and I always wanted to be Paul Lowe. I don't know if you remember Paul Lowe, but he was a running back for the Los Angeles Chargers back in the old days. He was a nifty little speedster, which I grew up not to be nifty or speedy. But, anyway, I could dream. So yeah, so the Chargers were in Los Angeles. I remember, it was the Rams with Crazy Legs Hirsch, I believe it was, and
Wow.
all of those guys. But you'd asked me about when I was a kid, football. My father was really against football.
Really?
Back when, yeah, when my older brother was going into high school, and my dad's father didn't let him play that kind of sports because he had some boils. He had problems with boils on his shoulders. And back in those days, if you got one of those things infected, it could kill you. So as a result, my grandfather didn't let my dad play football. And they were big, of course, being doctors, on the education stuff. So it was very important to get good grades. So my father, was expected to do well in that. And he kind of grew up that way, and that's the way he wanted my older brother, to concentrate on his studies and things. But when my brother went to high school, he was a giant. He was almost 6'4" in high school, probably going 250 or so. And this is back in the early 50s, or maybe the late 50s, 58, 59. So the football coach came up and asked him, "Son, have you ever thought about playing football?" He said, "Well, no." But anyway, the coach talked him into it, and my dad reluctantly allowed him to do it. And my brother's coach at the time, Jack Mealy, who just passed away a few days ago at 90, he's over 90 years old.
Wow, that's right.
Apparently my dad wanted to meet him in his office, and Mealy knew that Dr. Buehler wasn't big on sports, and so he was kind of sweating it. And I guess my dad went in there and told him how wonderful it's been for my brother to play football, and how the family's gotten behind it, and how it's so exciting, and that, my older brother's so enthused, and it's just a wonderful thing. And he told Mealy how much, he switched from, being a naysayer and turning in. He ended up being the team doctor for the high school for years. And
really?
Years. So, yeah. So it was that's what got me into football. I watched my older brother, doing it, and, Friday night going out to the high school football games. I mean, that, for a kid my age, that's like watching the pros play,
Oh, sure.
High school, all the marching bands and singing the alma mater afterwards. And Whittier was a pretty powerful team back in those days. However, they never won the CIF championship. They were Southern Section large school. They got to the finals or the playoffs, but they never won it. And in 1964, my senior group, for the first time, won the CIF large school Southern California section CIF championship, and they've never won it since. And now they've been downgraded. They're not a large school. We were a 4A, I think, back when when I was playing. So
I read a story where you were saying that night felt as special as the Super Bowl.
yeah, I said that, but I have to admit that's a little. I'm showing a sense of pride here because back when we won the CIF, I was the CIF Player of the Year for that whole Southern section. So,
wow.
I was kind of king of the heap.
Right.
When we won the Super Bowl, I wasn't so special. So maybe it had a little bit to do that. Now, if you asked me if I would trade the championship at Whittier High School for the Super Bowl, sorry, so Whittier alma mater, but I'd probably
cover your ears, Whittier.
but you know what? The other thing it wasn't just the fact that I was player and so forth, got more publicity back in high school, but in high school you were playing for your family, your friends. You grew up in Whittier. I remember when we were in junior high school, we all, we were playing touch football back then, but we all swore that when we were seniors in high school, we were going to win the CIF championship.
Wow.
We were a pretty good junior high school team. And so, when you're playing for your family and friends and, it's just a whole lot more personal,
yeah, different dynamic
in that kind of thing. And you're young, you're younger, and doing that kind of thing is exciting. So
absolutely,
it had that aspect to it.
We just had the last guest on the show was Eric Bischoff, who's a big time wrestling legend, and he wrote a lot of the big storylines for Hulk Hogan, some of these guys, and he talked about the modern football, and he said that and modern fighting, and he's not as much a fan because of free agency and how the guys move around so much. It's hard to create the family environment on a team, to love everyone and know who all the guys are and feel that sense of pride. Do you feel that way about the modern sports?
You know what? It's funny you bring that up because that's one of the things I tell people today, that the fans of today have no idea what they're missing. Back when I played, you couldn't jump from team to team. They had an option clause in our contract. It means if you signed a 3-year contract, you really signed a 4-year because there was an automatic option year at the end of that.
Oh, and for that held that.
Yes, and you had to play for, I think it was like 20% less than you did the year before.
On the option year?
Yeah, the option year. You got paid less than you did the year before.
Oh, man.
And you could negotiate throughout the year, and if you come to terms with your team, then you're reimbursed, they pay you, what the new deal is. But then you end up having taken another option year on, However, if you play out that option year, you play for the 20% less, then you become a free agent. However, the team that picks you up has to pay the team you left compensation in money or draft choices equal to your value. So it just didn't make sense for a lot of guys to play out their options. And so what results is all the good players played for one team. They bought homes there. Kids go to school there. Maybe at the end of their career they bounce around a little bit, but by and large, you played for one team, and you met the fans down at the gas station, down at the grocery store, Cub Scouts at school. The fans knew us. They knew us personally. So you're not sitting there watching a bunch of people who you don't know who they are. You're not just rooting for the color silver and black or for Al or, You're rooting for friends of yours, and that makes such
that's special. That's something special.
I have a distant cousin who was on the American girls soccer team that lost to Japan.
Oh, wow.
1 year. That was the year that that I think Japan had some stuff going on. It might have been the meltdown of the reactor or something. So the world was happy. The world was happy for the Japanese because they needed it, that sort of thing. But I don't like soccer. I don't watch soccer. But when she was on there, I was glued to the step. I was jumping up and down and screaming. I mean, that's the difference between knowing somebody there and just having, people who you read about in the papers.
That's when the whole thing feels like family, and there's a special magic that brings.
Yeah, today you don't know those players out there. They may be gone tomorrow. They sadly make enough money. They don't need to get out into town. And they fly back on the weekend to where they live. So they don't buy homes there. Why would you buy homes? You may not be there. So,
right.
There's just a big disconnect now. So
they don't get a chance to invest in the community.
That's
right. Yep.
Now the second part of the thing that the point he was making was the fact that because of that, the guys don't get to build up that brand name and don't get to have that lasting name. Like think about a guy like your guy John Vella, who had a going shop out there in the Oakland area. Your guy Art Thoms, who's a name and a staple for the Raider fans, and now has his laundromats, community businesses. They can relate to that.
It's going to be
Jim Otto.
Jim Otto, right?
Jim Otto and Clem Daniels and their liquor stores and all that stuff. Yeah.
Will we see that in the future? I guess the athletes don't need to do as much work, but will the names last because they've invested in the communities and they've had the long runs? It's going to be interesting to see.
Well, the names now, that get it are huge contracts for nationally known.
Right.
I mean, these guys who are known all over the world, they're getting these huge contracts to advertise, and so forth. But yeah, the regular guy, and one of the things that was crappy was, I once said that if you were wanted, if you were number one wanted fugitive for the FBI, become an offensive lineman. They'll never find it. These defensive guys, you make a tackle, Art Tom, tackle by Art Otis Trump, Jack Tatum, they announced who did it. Offensive lineman, right. The only time is when you have a penalty and they don't say your name, they give your number. So, who knows offensive linemen? But, I'll tell you, Al felt you build a team around your offensive line. I mean, a quarterback is very, very important. But you can see with a guy like Peyton Manning, when they lost the Super Bowl that year, I can't remember who they lost it to. He had no time to throw the ball. If you remember that game, they were on top of him before he got 3 steps back. You can be the best quarterback in the world, and if you don't have time to throw, you're not going to do nothing. Well. So, and Madden always thought that if you can't run the ball, you can't win, was his thinking. He felt that the running game is what opened up the passing game. And so their philosophy was to pound it out on the ground. And if you're, chopping off 5 and 6 and 8 yard running plays, your defensive backs, the defensive back, you're going to have to come up and help support, because the run is worth. That's when your receivers get down behind them, when they've got to play up and start supporting on the run. So.
And when you got Cliff Branch running vertical, that's scary.
Oh yeah, and Bolitnikoff,
Bolitnikoff, man, big race, catching passes, and
Casper. Yeah. So you get an offensive line there, and you can make some quarterbacks look pretty good. Give them time. You and I could probably complete a few passes with a good offensive line.
Oh yeah, Bucci's running pretty deep in his little flag football league down here in Florida. I'll tell you that. So you were a stud wrestler in high school too. 4 years, varsity champ. Do you think that the wrestling background added a lot to your handwork and your footwork in football?
Well, whether I did or not, my high school football coach, thought it did, so he made me do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, wrestling was kind of a grimy thing, and another thing that'll show how bad I am, how egotistical I am. When I was in high school, my reputation was the baddest guy. I was a nice guy, but I was strong and big, and could beat up anybody.
Don't mess around with them.
Yes. Now football, if you screwed up, people might not see it. It might be in the line somewhere and it's not glaring. Out on the mat, it's you and one other guy. And if you screw up, it's on you. So there was a lot of pressure to be successful in it. And so, it wasn't the most fun thing. I look back and I think, if I had been less cautious because I didn't want to lose, so I played it safe, I might have been a lot better wrestler. But anyway, that was my high school coach. He was actually the assistant football coach who was the wrestling coach.
Oh, wow.
So he made wrestling. But I didn't pursue that in college. But and Vic Lopez, he was my was assistant coach and wrestling coach, and he thought that trained you, your balance and quickness and things like that would serve you well playing football. So let me say that about wrestling. Every once in a while, if a defensive tackle got around me or something, some of those takedowns I used were beneficial.
Great wrestling.
Yeah, they weren't exactly legal for an offensive lineman, but they were.
What did it feel like growing up? Your older brother was at Stanford, and that was a dream of yours to go there. What did it feel like your first day in?
Well, first of all, I didn't have much choice to go to Stanford.
Oh, really?
I was brainwashed. The aunts and uncles and stuff that I was talking about who are doctors, they're all
right.
Stanford. My dad
okay.
was Stanford. My dad was Stanford. One of my younger brothers was Stanford. My older brother Stanford. The guy next door to us when I was growing up in down in Whittier, the guy by the name of Lee McNitt, he was a huge Stanford supporter. Every year he would have the coaches come to his house for a barbecue, and he would get all of the good athletes in Whittier to come up and meet the coaching staff and have, and here I was a little kid next door, and he'd have me over there. And I remember meeting Jack Curtis back in the day,
wow.
way back. And he was the first one to build a home on our street that I lived on. And he named it Stanford Way. So I grew up on Stanford Way next to Lee McNitt. Father was Stanford, brother Stanford, I was expected to go to Stanford. So, it was not something that I actually chose. But, I was destined to go there. So
that's no light accomplishment, man. That's one of my favorite logos with the redwood, the strong redwood in the S.
But let me just say this. I was an Indian. I was a Stanford Indian, and I'm still a Stanford Indian.
Really?
Yeah, we were the Indians. The student body voted to not have it Indians because, it was insulting.
Oh,
to
really?
The, Native American. But our mascot, if you want to call him that, was Prince Lightfoot, who was an actual Native American. And he'd come out in war dress and he'd do war dancing and stuff. He wanted it to remain Indian. But, you know, I guess they're too close to Berkeley, I guess. And
offended by everything. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. And here's the funny thing. They didn't even name them cardinals after the bird. They named them a color. It's a color.
Wow.
Because they might offend the bird if they called it cardinal after the bird. So
that is outrageous.
A color couldn't be offended, so they called it cardinal.
Oh my God! The high school I went to was Pascack Valley in New Jersey, and the mascot was always an Indian, and they had the coolest Indian. It was with the Mohawk on it, because in that area there were Mohawk Indians, and it got changed in recent years because kids were complaining about it. It got changed to the Pascack Valley Valayans. I said, "Are you kidding me?" Went from the Indians with the Mohawk mascot to the Valayans.
What is a Valayan?
Couldn't tell you. Sounds like a side of veal.
Terrible.
Yeah. It's a crazy world now. Nobody can take a joke.
Right. Very sad. And everyone's got to, think 3 times before they say something so they don't offend somebody. It's really outrageous.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Man, oh man.
Hey, what was your favorite or fondest memory of Al Davis?
Well, I remember one time, this was, I'm not sure if it was in 75 or 76 when we won the Super Bowl. I think it might have been 75. Al wanted to know about defensive tackles, and I had played against him. And Dave Rowe was one of them. And there was another guy, and I can't remember who it was, but Al approached me in the locker room while we were getting dressed to go out to practice, and was quizzing me about the 2 players and what I thought. And then, I was telling him, and the whole time he was looking around the room, never looked at me, looking around the room. And, I went on talking, and then he just walked away. I guess he heard all he needed to hear, and that was it. Now, I know he's a guy with a lot on his mind, and I he's not trying to be rude. He's just, I'm sure he listened to what I had to say, and
right.
And we ended up getting Dave Rowe, so that
wow.
was obviously a good thing. But
that's funny you mentioned Dave Rowe. Dave Rowe was our last guest on the show, and man, he spoke highly of your 2's relationship. And then I was reading a cool story about you 2 with the remote control cars and planes. Tell us a little about that.
Well, that's what, when I was at camp and I had the spare time, I mean, I did go out and do a little drinking with the guys. Usually after practice, we'd go to Al's Cactus Room, which was just a couple doors down, and beer and pool. But I spent a lot of time building model airplanes. Rowe built, I got Rowe, he built a remote controlled boat.
Wow.
I had Monty Johnson, Ray Guy, Ted Qualick, kind of doing the same thing. And I remember one time I was out behind the practice field up there in Santa Rosa. They had fenced in there like 3 football fields. It was huge, big pasture behind the El Rancho Tropicana. And on the other side of the fence was more pasture. So I remember taking my brand new, shiny, blue remote control plane, had like about a 4.5 foot wingspan. And I was flying it around out there with Rowe. And this was a maiden flight, and those things, it's pretty easy when they're flying away from you, but when they're coming back at you and everything's reversed, it can be a little tough. So anyway, I was trying to come in for a landing, and I lost control of it, and something locked it up. CB radios were big back then, and if somebody keyed a CB radio, it could, screw up your transmission. But anyway,
wow.
Plane went right over me. Oh, as I was flying it around, there was some horses in shadow would go over those horses, and they'd start running around and spook them and everything. So I bring it in for a landing, and I lose contact with it, and the plane crashes in the middle of the corral.
Oh, no.
So I'm worried as heck about my airplane, So I run over there, I leap the fence, and I run out in the middle of their corral, and I'm looking at my plane, and then all of a sudden I look up, and these horses are, stomping the ground and kicking dirt, and they're getting ready to charge me, So Rowe had walked out there with me, and he's a farm boy from back east, so Rowe grabs the big friggin' blue wing, and he's standing there with his hand up like a traffic cop going, "Whoa, boy, whoa," and he's flashing his big blue airplane wing under his arm and standing there. So I grabbed my plane and I ran like crazy, and I leaped the fence and left Rowe over there. But I guess he was intimidating enough. He didn't get trampled. He got out of there okay, but that would have been a bad thing to go to Al and John and tell him I got a broken leg. I was trampled by some horses trying to get my model airplane
Oh, yeah.
out of the corral.
But
that was a fun occasion.
Imagine you had to go back, tell Al you Rowe knocked out a horse.
Hendricks was a real practical joker, and he one time slipped into my room, and he looked in the plans for my airplane, and he found the most important, smallest part. It was essential to have it, and it was tiny, and he took it.
Oh.
So that I was, and he let me do and look around and hunt for this dang little part for a day or so, and then he finally comes in giggling, "You looking for this?" So, I tell people that Stabler came out with his Tell All book, the one that he wrote.
Oh,
and,
right.
All these guys used to make fun of me, how childish I was, playing with model airplanes, George, what a little kid. But when that book came out, they all said, "No, I was flying airplanes with George. I wasn't doing any of that stuff."
Oh, man.
When you said that about the model airplanes and the CB radios, I got to thinking about, when you're on a plane and they say cell phones off. I wonder if it's similar, like, the transmissions from the cell phone to the plane transmissions.
Yeah. They probably wouldn't have you turn it off if it didn't make a difference. But,
right.
I can't believe that it's that critical now. If it was back early on, I'm sure they've had, done things to, they wouldn't allow somebody to even have a phone if it could possibly knock a plane out of, a plane out of the air.
Right.
So, I don't worry too much about it now.
Man, here's one thing you got to tell Raider Nation about. So Dave Rowe, folks, I called Dave Rowe and I said, "Could you get me in touch with George?" Dave had given me a number, but then you know what he said? He said to me, "But if that number's not the right one, ask Art Thoms, because Art and George married the sisters, and now they're brother-in-laws." Can you please tell us that story? I couldn't believe it.
Well, Art was dating Darlene, and
right.
Her older sister Sandy she didn't like football players. She went to Cal, and she was more of an intellectual, but Darlene was telling her, that, why don't you date a player or something? So she had a picture of the team up on the wall, and Sandy picked me out. So Art came up to me in the locker room and told me that Darlene's sister would like to meet me, and so, we met, and that's the way that we together. So she ended
That
up
is
liking
so cool.
She ended up liking a football player. I guess it's because
she got herself a Raider.
Yeah, I guess it's because I was so intellectual as well, you know. So.
Oh man.
I think he was a stud too, folks. Still is, but oh man, you got some great shots, man. I was looking through all types of pictures, making the artwork for this episode, man. You had all types of different looks too. You had your bearded look, you had your clean shaven look, all types of looks, all stud looks.
Yeah, I experimented a little bit. I realized, I thought, you know, if I grow, just let the beard grow, you know, I won't have to shave every day, which was a pain in the butt. But I found out having a beard, you have to shave more. It's more difficult, you know. You got to trim all this stuff, or you look, you look shabby. But
right.
Getting back to Art and myself marrying sisters, Upshaw used to say, "Oh, Kumbas," or something. I forget what it is in Spanish or something. But I said, Art is no relationship to me. He's my wife's brother-in-law. No relationship to me. When I wanted to distance myself, I actually picked that up from an uncle of mine who I mentioned that he was related to an aunt, and he told me, she's not related to me. Yeah.
That is so funny. That is awesome how that worked out, though. Very cool rate of history right there.
We had a lot of fun. It was, John, like I say, he wasn't rah-rah, he was, and if you wanted to goof around a little bit and be silly, that's fine. And it was fine with Al, as long as you win on Sunday,
Right.
And obviously during practice, you can't be screwing around too much, or you won't win on Sunday, and you can distract other people who, may need to be more serious. So, I remember on one occasion, we were playing back east. And when we play back east, we fly back on a Friday. We have a short practice in the morning in Oakland, and then we jump on a plane. And Fridays are special teams day. On Wednesdays was defensive day. Thursdays was offensive day. And we would wear shoulder pads and helmets. We wouldn't do any real terribly hard hitting once the season started, but you'd wear those things because you had to move quickly to get your timing down, and you didn't want to get hurt. So,
right.
But then on Friday it's special team, no pads, just helmets, and pants, no pads in your pants, and we run through special teams: kickoff returns, field goal, extra points, punting, so forth. And it's kind of a relaxed. Guys aren't padded up, so guys are a little goofy. And I was sitting there one day on the sidelines. I think we're doing kickoff returns, something. Adam walks by, he says, "I'll bet you in 5 minutes I blow my top." I looked at him. I said, "You plan those things?" He says, Yeah. He says, "I look at things rationally, non-emotionally. I look at it. I see if the team needs to be hollered at or they need to be praised, and if I decide they need to be yelled at, I simply start watching all of the bad stuff and ignore the good until I just naturally blow up." And sure enough, wasn't 3.5, 4 minutes. He yells, gosh, cussing, yelling, and screaming, and everybody all of a sudden stands up straight and starts concentrating on their work.
Wow.
So John, he was different. He knew what he was doing.
Great John Madden, man. Those practices have to stick out in your mind so vivid, man. And now we got nothing but good things on the horizon for us. Got to make you proud to see the corner of the Raiders turn this year and where they're headed.
Yeah, Yeah. You know, I feel sad for the Raider fans. You know, they're moving.
Right.
I do admit that Las Vegas fits their persona, but being Raiders, you know.
Oh, yeah.
The interesting thing to me, though, was every year at training camp, the first day, we have a meeting, and these former FBI agents who were now working for the NFL would come in and talk to us about gamblers, you know, the places in town where these guys hang out, you know, professional guys trying to get information off of players,
right?
Listening and buying drinks, and you know, they were very, very careful about, you know, protecting, you know, the league from this gambling outfits, and so here they are going to Las Vegas.
Right.
How things have changed, you know.
Yeah.
Really, it's about the money now, and you know, I mean, it's always been money. You know, it's professional football, but you know, that has changed so much, and then all of the rah-rah, you know, all these dancing and goofing around stuff, you know, after touchdowns or plays, you know, that wasn't allowed back when I remember, I think it was a little bit after I retired, but there was a defensive lineman, I can't remember his name, who played for the Jets, who when he'd sack a quarterback, he did a dance and stuff.
Okay.
And they were fining him. They wouldn't let him do it. He had to quit doing it.
Wow.
I remember when we used to, you know, if you scored a touchdown, guys would throw the ball in the stands. They stopped that. They put a fine on that. You know,
wow.
Now, you know, they allow all that and all the rah-rah stuff and jumping around and high-fiving and all that stuff. It's changed. They realize that that's what draws the interest, you know, people like that. So, you know, they're going for that stuff now. It's being politically correct and providing the people with what they want to see without any concern for morality or, you know.
Right. It's the morals. It's the strong. The NFL had iconic morals.
Mm-hmm.
And it was built on iconic morals. And that's one of the things that hurts to see, because now it's just it chases the ratings just like any other program, and it'll put its morals aside for that. And I guess if that's the thing that's most interesting to see is, you know, time keeps going on, is what's happening to the morals.
Well, and you see all this reality TV stuff and everything, which is about as unreal as anything
as it gets.
I mean, Naked and Afraid. What is that all about? Naked and Afraid.
Oh man!
But you know, give the public what they want. And
right. Imagine they filmed that in Oakland.
Doesn't matter whether society's, you know, getting more, you know, more people getting killed and more people road rage and all of these things that, you know, it's just a breakdown in decency, I guess, or character. You know, people aren't as concerned with the character of people anymore. It's
right. Just following the codes and sticking to your morals, sticking to your guns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I like that there's when you can break it down into simple things like have some pride, have poise in all things you do, stay committed to excellence, and just win. Seek to be a winner, and maintain your pride and poise. Simple things.
I know that. Yeah, there are a few players that are very refreshing. Running backs, you know, who'll score. They just throw the ball to the ref. You know, they don't do the jig and
don't need to run their mouths.
Yeah, you know, they just throw the ball. That, you know, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to score touchdowns. You know, that's what you do, and you know, when you do it, that's wonderful. But it's done. now go back and score another one.
Right.
You know, I remember with the Raiders, this a few years back though, that, you know, I remember a linebacker, you know, sacked a quarterback, you know, and a Raider linebacker, and they were dancing around and slapping stuff, and they're 20 points behind.
Oh, God, nothing worse than that.
What, you know, what are you celebrating, guy? So you made a tackle. You're losing the friggin' game. You've lost the last 4 games. What are you jumping around for? You know, what have you got to celebrate? Get your head on straight, you know?
Yeah.
That's the key is.
But I like this team we got now, man. You know, there's a lot of humbleness on this team. Derek Carr, good leader. Khalil Mack, good leader. Cooper, humble guy. Like Jack Del Rio, good leader. I like what the Raiders got going now.
You know what? You're right, and I've met quite a few of them. We've gone up to training camp. They've had days for us.
Sure, the alumni.
Yeah, alumni guys come up there, and I'm really surprised, you know, because there are probably a lot more of those guys than you think. Because when you see it on TV, all you recognize are the show off, you know, that's
right
basically. But you know, I was very impressed with the guys that I've met and talked with. Changed my thinking a little bit. You know, I'm hopeful, you know, that that kind of thing is growing in popularity, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, I think it is. I think that humility is in, because we've seen, man, it's almost like, you know, everyone's sick of it. You know, I'm in my 20s, and it's like, for me, it's like, all right, like let's get some humility in here, man. Everything's so selfish, and I think that a lot of people feel that way, and it's good to see a turnaround, and especially a guy like Derek Carr. That's why I love to see him as a team leader.
Yeah, it's great. And we got a good offensive line in there.
Yeah, right? Let's talk about one of the best offensive line in the game. Exactly. Oh,
you know, they always, you know, when a quarterback completing passes, you know, they're talking about his accuracy and how, he's picking them apart, and these ends are getting back behind people, and the defensive backs can't cover these guys. You know, the holes are opening up, and these backs are just tearing them up. You know, you look at that stuff, and guess why? You got guys blocking.
Absolutely.
So,
oh, man.
But anyway, that's, like I say, you want to get lost, go become an offensive lineman. Nobody will find you.
Oh, the Raider Nation knows and loves ours. Man,
I'm
so happy. I'm so happy that we were able to connect and get you on, man, because I've been wanting to talk to you such a long time.
Well, it's wonderful to be. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, before you go, what do you got to say to Raider Nation?
Well, you know what? When I lit the torch for Al the game last year, the opening game of him, I was waiting for that answer, for that question to come from Lincoln Kennedy, you know, because I was going to say, well, watch this, and stand there and ask for the crowd to give a yell and have it be overwhelming. You know, you know, that's what I think of the Raider Nation. You know, just listen to them yell. You know, that's kind of a sad thing, because a lot of people, you know, are not going to be able to. You know, for those who can afford a weekend trip to Vegas, I guess, you know, that's a nice thing. But you know, for your, you know, the thing that we were in Oakland, we were in stark contrast to the wine and cheese people over in San Francisco, the 49ers.
Right.
People, you know, we were the kind of like Pittsburgh, you know, the working man type of people. And those are the kind of people who are not going to be making those trips. You know, the down to earth, hard work,
blue collar family guy.
Yep. So anyway, go Raider Nation for the next 2 years.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode. Thanks for joining us again here on the Raider Life Podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Boots, and for more episodes, head on over to RaiderLife.com. Don't forget, follow us on Twitter at RaiderLifePod and on Facebook by searching Charlie Boots. God bless you and your families, and I'll see you next time here on the Raider Life.